Hello there! As it is the norm of these second thoughts overviews, I have played through the initial turns, got a feel for the faction, so these are my conclusions. In the end, as always, I'll give you some army compositions to try out in your own plays. This is not an in-depth guide, but definitely will assist you in your gameplay. So now, let's go play with Azazel. So for your short victory objectives, you need to maintain control of 5 specific provinces. Mostly they are in Norska, really. They're just in the outskirts here of Norska, close to Kislev. And then you also need to occupy, loot, razor, sack 35 different settlements. A very short campaign indeed. Objectives are rather easy to obtain, and you have somewhat different options on how to approach it. You can either conquer or ally with other Norskans, for example. That helps you direct your strength into other locations. So, yeah, and achieving this will give you plus 30 winds of magic in all armies, which is always great, you know, to ensure your spellcasters can shine on the battlefield. Now, the long campaign victory requires the short to occupy, loot, razor, sack 80 different settlements, and to control 13 of a very long list of settlements. I'm just going to show you a couple of them here and there. You know, they're spread all over the world. You can check the minimap there. So yeah, they're all spread all over the world. You know, the ancient city of Quinquex, where Marathi is at. So there's several of them. Of course, they're all heavily significant. But the advice would be to just expand naturally. You know, in your vicinity, and you know, at a certain point you're going to go, okay, let me check how many do I need, and then you'll direct your forces to it. Because they're so spread out, the chances are that you're going to get 3 or 4, whatever you expand, or 5 even, or 6, you know. So don't think too much on it. Don't think too hard on it. Now, Azazel, he is humanity's bane, so he gets plus 80 diplomatic relations with Empire, Kislev, Cathay, and Bretonia. This helps streamline the campaign into a different idea. You will be able to go and fight against them, of course, but you'll also be able to ally with them and then have those units from outposts, for instance, which is always nice. Now, the vassals gain immune to psychology, and they do spread Slaanesh corruption. You can seduce units, and you can apply and benefit from seductive influence and the gifts of Slaanesh. So, making this, of course, a much more Slaanesh-focused thematic campaign. Now, in terms of climates, like other Chaos factions, they don't care. You can go anywhere. It's a perfect domination campaign. If you wish to go map completion, it's really perfect. So yeah, go for it. So your starting location is right in the middle between Norska and Kislev. So you're likely to have some trouble with one or the other, depending where you wish to expand to, because you kind of have that choice really, due to the good relations that you actually have with Kislevite factions. So, you know, because of that, they do still have that aversion, but still it's completely different than, you know, with other Warriors of Chaos factions. So, it is a 3-settlement province, but Warriors of Chaos work differently. So all that it matters is that you actually have a few dark fortresses nearby, which is that symbol here. So you have 3 nearby. I know there's a couple more here and here, so that's a good idea. You also have plenty on the north, so that's good to get. That's where you get the most of your income, most of your recruitment. So even just these 3 will give you a permanently very solid base. So typical expression is either to conquer or to vassal Norska, and then you're free to go wherever you wish. You may want to invest in good relations with the Order Tide and go against the Chaos factions. It's really up to you. You may wish to just end the Empire of Men and get rid of the entirety of the humanity. Really, all that you wish for it. It's your choice. It's what you wish to do. So in terms of diplomacy, you are Warriors of Chaos still. You're on that side, but at the same time you do have seductive influence and better relations with Empire, Kislev, Bretonia, Cathay. So it's difficult to say what your enemies will be or your allies will be. You may decide to do a campaign where you have allies and vassals in the Empire, Kislev, Bretonia, then do another where you have the typical Norska, maybe other Monogods helping you out, Skaven like I put here. So typical enemies will be the dwarves, Kislev, Norska Empire, and then again they can be your allies too. However, the most thematic idea perhaps is to have the support of the Norscan tribes while you dominate the empire, Kislev, maybe forcing some of them to fight one another before you crush them, hence my recommendations here. Of course, you can totally go the other way around. What I would recommend is for you to get missiles, of course, because you lack a little bit of those missiles, so artillery, some long-range missile units, or for instance, even from Noska, their missile units are really good. One is against armor, the other one against AD large, so that's cool. So yeah, and some of their single entities doesn't hurt really. So yeah, it's definitely a great faction for you to develop a lot with the outpost mechanic, and you should totally focus on those as well. For mechanics, souls are a unique currency harvested by fighting anything that is not demons. They're used for heroes and lords to achieve marks of chaos, and also for the gifts of chaos mechanic. Let's talk about the gifts of chaos first. Now, they consist of a series of buffs that you can have active, actually. They cost upkeep in terms of the souls, so be wary of that. Okay, I have these two because I wanted those units to recruit, but I could have wanted, you know, some other effects, such as less control, but more income from provinces, that sort of idea. You do have some slots for gifts of Undivided, and then you have some slots here for gifts of Slanesh, specifically. All because Azazel is rather devoted to Slanesh, you can only have those. This is a different Warriors of Chaos campaign. You can only go into Slanesh or Undivided, unlike the others, the other Warriors of Chaos lords so far that I've talked about. Now, in essence, then you have the Path of Glory, like others in the Warriors of Chaos, but of course in this case the Path of Glory for heroes, for other lords, of course, except Azazel. Azazel's already a demon. But you can grant a mark of chaos to extend them into a new form. Okay, this costs the souls, and in particular you also have these boons of chaos, so missions that once you successful have those, then suddenly you can unlock these specific traits, let's say, or you can then later on devote to either Slanesh, lore of Slanesh, or devote to Slanesh in the lore of shadows. Of course, by spending quite a significant amount of souls. That's the path to glory. Really good, you know, to ascend them into demons. Very useful, very customizable idea. Now, then you also have that eye there, the eye of the gods. This offers a series of dilemmas. Basically, it will prompt a dilemma you'll have to choose based on the number of active gifts. Of course, the more you have, the more this, you know, this eye of the gods mechanic shows up. So these offer powerful rewards. So be on the lookout for them. Now, in terms of the specifics. Here we have authority. What is authority? It's a way to grant cheaper upgrades and upkeep, as well as replenishment to a specific alignment, counting Undivided as specific. You see there, Undivided is also counted as a specific. In terms of Azazel, all that you can do is go with the Undivided or with Slanesh, and that's all that you can do. You don't have access to Nurgle, to, you know, to Khorne, to those are for the other warriors of the champions of chaos factions, basically. Now, it's a very straightforward way to customize your armies, so you can just go with Slanesh build, or we can go with Undivided, or mix them up. That's basically it. Your units also recruit instantly, either from the gifted units, or, which you can only have 6, by the way, or by recruiting, you know, normal warband recruitment. Once you recruit those, like, that's why I have, you know, turn 5 already a 50 stack, a 20 stack, 50 stack, wow, turn 5 a 20 stack, because I've been recruiting all the units that I could, you know, as fast as possible. I want to build up an army really fast in order to go and conquer. That's the main idea. So, in terms of buildings, just to speak regarding that little mechanic as well, you can build only everything in the Dark Fortress locations. More on that later on, but that's all that you can do. So the only place where you can build actually properly, it's the places that are listed like this, a Dark Fortress site. Now, finally, you do have the specific mechanics from Slanesh, which are, you can seduce units, and definitely Azazel, like you've seen before, has a little bit more bonuses for it. He actually enjoys some bonuses to be able to to ensure that he can actually seduce units from Kislev, Empire, Bretonnia, Cathay. So that's really cool, really thematic. He'll go against those factions, and he can pitch them against each other because he also has diplomatic bonuses for them. It's really cool. Now he also applies seductive influence. Now this seductive influence basically will allow that as soon as it gives some buffs, you know, as you can see there, the leadership growth, of course, but at one point you see that when they are, you know, when they are completely under your seductive influence, then you can vassal them. These were actually forced vassalization, but in essence the idea is that this will grow, and at one point you will be allowed to vassal them. Specifically, you can see this in the diplomacy point, as you can see here. For instance, this with the Sarl already have more diplomatic relations with them, more Slaanesh corruption with it, so, and soon I'll likely be able to vassal them, because of course that will only grow with time. That's basically it. And always consider that vassals are kind of like a specific mechanic, especially nowadays. You always have, you know, some of those allegiance points to expand, to request armies, to build outposts, of course, to set targets, you know, and that's always a nice mechanic in itself. Sorry, particularly good with Azazel. And one specific mechanic, very cool one, is the warband upgrade. So by selecting one specific unit here, as you can mention, you can upgrade it into either the undivided upgrade, so you can turn them as soon as they have the experience. You can turn them into Chaos Warriors with great weapons, or Chaos Warriors with halberds. And then those, as soon as they have the experience, you can turn them into Chaos Knights, or you can turn them into Chosen with great weapons, and then into Aspiring Champions, etc. Or you can go into the Slaanesh upgrades, basically. So specific units from Slaanesh, which is always nice. It's really cool. And that's the typical idea that I want you to have. So you're going to have to raise the experience of these guys in order to be able to upgrade them. But of course, for instance, maybe I want some more Marauders of Slaanesh Hellscourges and then I'll select and I'll just play the cost, and that's it. And you always need a couple of technologies, or some technologies, to be able to do that. So yeah, it's a very interesting mechanic, one of the most exciting ones that people were enjoying previously, you know, when this was announced, and I definitely really love it. So in terms of edicts, province edicts can be used with vassals owning some of the settlements. By the way, of course, that helps so that you can benefit from the benefits of the edicts without having to own the specific province. Now, you do have a chaos corruption, and specifically this is always for Slaanesh corruption for you, Slaanesh corruption in adjacent provinces and in that province. Then you have a sort of defensive one, enemy movement range reduced, enemy hero action success chance reduced, and less attrition when you're under siege, and more melee defense. That's really cool. Then we have the control and lesser chance of a plague spreading, so if you are under the effects of a plague, by all means. And then we also have the income from all buildings, so that's a very good one to have. And then we have a lesser control, but the local warband recruitment, it's plus 20% and more construction cost, or less construction cost for all buildings, always useful. So these are quite thematics, which are really interesting. Now then we have the army stances, and these are the fairly typical ones, you know, channeling for more winds of magic for 10% movement. Then we have encamp, that does cost 50% movement to start with. It does enable replenishment, of course, and immunity to attrition. That's the most that we really want for that. Then we have raiding, which gives an interesting unit experience gain per turn, which is always helpful beyond everything else, and it does only cost 25% movement to incorporate, you know. And then we have the ambush stance, which is really great. And then we also have the march stance. So all of them very, very much the typical ones, but noteworthy the addition of unit experience gain per turn when you're raiding, which by all means you should always be doing if you're playing, of course, with the Warriors of Chaos faction. So in terms of buildings, it has a rather unique approach because of the warband upgrades mechanic. What you unlock is just a basic version of the unit, so that it is easier to upgrade from that, in essence. It also provides unit capacity for those units, and with other income buffs. So you have 6 military buildings. You can see the types of units that you can recruit there, like instant spawns or instant forsaken. You know, they'll just go into the pool, and that's the idea. And then you can upgrade them later on if you wish. So 6 military buildings and some infrastructure ones. You can kind of build nearly everything in just a couple of these dark fortresses. So you should have full military in no time, really. Now, in terms of the infrastructure ones, you have a growth, tremendous growth, by the way, and replenishment. These reach insane levels, really. Then we have favor, so income, basically, and income from post-battle loot, faction-wide, and second settlements faction-wide. So this really grows as the more of these dark fortresses you have. And then you have this specific one which is more control, more income from all buildings, which includes the vassal regions and adjacent allies, and more Slanesh corruption everywhere. So it's always helpful. Of course, these are limited to where you can have dark fortresses, which is why they're so powerful. As for the minor settlement ones, for instance, if they have a port, it's kind of selected by default. You cannot choose. Okay, but they do have some province-wide buffs. So, for instance, you can have more casualty replenishment rate in armies in the region, or more winds of magic, or you can go with this one for lesser warband upgrades. Maybe you want to do a lot of upgrading. Maybe you have a specific army that has leveled up, you know, to level 5, and then you want to upgrade all those units. By all means, get them over here next to one of these settlements, build this building, and of course it will give you a little bit more of a discount there. So there's some choices here. Souls gained from battles if all armies in adjacent regions, and then the magic item drop chance, or you can have just a defensive warband camp. That's basically it. So note that you don't have a lot of choices here. For the most part, people argue that it's better just to gift to the vassal instead of taking it yourself, but there may be circumstances where you want to build up these buildings. That's why I'm mentioning that, of course. Now, in terms of research, it changes for Azazel and it changes for the other champions of chaos. So he has a unique tech tree, mostly around the mechanics of the faction and having more Slanesh authority, more Slanesh corruption, for instance. So that's really cool. It's certainly a great one. It does change what units get. So there's certainly differences between all the Warriors of Chaos leaders. So like, because of the faction having a different tech tree, then what the units get is also different for each faction lord, you see, because everyone has their own tech tree and everyone gets different stuff. For instance, you get bonus versus infantry +8 for all Hellscourge units, which are rank 4 and above there. This doesn't typically happen with other Warriors of Chaos, so it only happens with Azazel. So that's the sort of idea. It's quite thematic. It makes it a mess trying to figure out how good units are in specific faction lords. Just take it that the specific technologies will change how specific units work, which, you know, in essence, it's good to customize, of course. Currently, I believe there is a bug that it doesn't allow you to get the technology that you need to upgrade into exalted demonettes, so you can only have demonettes, not exalted ones, but predicted that by the time that you're actually watching this, it may already have been fixed as well. So as always, you have your Lord-specific buffs. In the case of Azazel, there's a lot of them abilities that he gives to units, so he doesn't focus on any specific unit per se, just abilities that he can give to anyone that he recruits, which is excellent. It gives him some more flexibility on the army that you can get with him. Remember that authority is actually what gives you replenishment and upkeep reduction, but you also have that in the blue line as well, as you can see here, and also with the Blessed by Evil. It does give you some more income, so, you know, you do have some options near over here. There's some differences in terms of the blue line. It does give you, for instance, more experience gained for units when fighting against forces of order, and you can also get some lesser warband upgrades costs. So by all means, you can choose to have a specific ones of these, or just go into, you know, making them really powerful in battle, up to you. Of course, you have that melee, you have that magical line, and then you have the army or red line. It's one of the best and less expensive, so they're streamlined into basically the chaos, the mortal and the demon units for the most part. So you can definitely have great combos even with just a very few skill points allocated, which is excellent. So these are the red line skills for the units of the Warriors of Chaos roster. It's a very good line, actually. Most of the time you can just choose 2 and you get a lot of different units for, you know, different roles, so that you can get all the necessary roles basically, which is great. So Azazel, he does not get anything specific to any unit, just a little bit more in terms of melee attack to heroes, but still, that's why I gave him just a couple more heroes for the theme, let's say. However, he has plenty of abilities and spells to assist the army, so it helps any composition. You can choose the general theme with Slanesh units, you know, that vibe, or you can choose just the standard, you know, chosen with Chaos Knights. I included just some chariots there. You can exchange these for exalted ones. I didn't have the unit cards there to select it, but yeah, that's basically just to illustrate the theme. Or you can use, you know, some monsters here, like I said, like some single entities, you know, just to share them. Notice how effective those are in terms of red line skills as well. Notice this is more like a theme. Over here I used 2 of those war shrines from Slanesh, but this one actually gives physical resistance, so it's really cool as well, and this one is more of a damage dealer. So yeah, that it's kind of cool to use one or the other. Honestly, here I would probably do the same idea. So yeah. Then we have the Chaos Sorcerer Lords. So they do have some advantages for Forsaken, Chaos Spawn, and Chaos Feral Manticores there, so why not some combinations where I try to use a little bit of both. Manticores, especially at the end, they're really cool. So they're really cool. They're really good single entities, good to snipe enemy lords or heroes, you know, especially when there's 3 of them against 1, you know, that sort of idea. This is more of an army, like monster army. It's good for ambushes. It does have some skirmishes here, some hellfire cannons there, so it's really great for some flexibility as well. You know, you can pepper them down and force them into your army, and then your army is really damage dealing focus. And then we can have, you know, just some chosen with some spawn, some forsaken, just to get into the theme, even if it is just a sweeper style army, you know, nothing that you would send against the very top elite units of the AI, but definitely something to have some fun, some variety in the gameplay. Then for Chaos Lords, they do give some nice physical resistance for Chaos Warriors, Chaos Knights, and Chosen units, so why not? Just embracing that. This army here is basically the same as here, just added some flexibility with some rather horse masters and some hell cannons there. And then we have, this is more of like the sweeper army or just the mid-game army, so that you can see what you can get, but also a typical idea for you to perceive that this is what most likely will get upgraded to this later on or something like that, you know, that sort of idea. Or you can just keep this army if it is working well nicely for you. No need to upgrade it, unless of course you have the funds, and then if you have the funds, just get the chosen, of course. So, in terms of conclusion here, a very quick conclusion. Azazel is the first of the Warriors of Chaos Lords that does not get everything. He only focuses on Slanesh. This creates a rather unique Warriors of Chaos campaign, and you can tell just by the specific armies that he will get. You know, there's no Khorne, there's no Tzeentch, there's no Nurgle. It's all Slanesh and Undivided, and that alone is a great combination to use and to have during a campaign, let alone with the diplomacy aspect. So on one playthrough you may go against Kislev, the Empire, and just be all evil, and on another playthrough you may just go against the Norsca tribes and conquer everything in Norsca and just ally with Kislev, ally with Empire, you know, and destroy everything that is chaos before turning on them, you know. But that idea will give you different outposts, different units to play through, and that's always a good idea, to have some different and varied play style. Your army, for the most part, will always consist of great infantry, great cavalry, average missiles, great monsters and single entities, good flyers, relies on upgrading units, and requires time for the elite troops. I should note that this changed slightly because, of course, we're talking about Azazel. We're not talking about the typical Warriors of Chaos experience. It's slightly different. That's why the missiles reduced a little bit and the flyers as well, because they no longer have the good missiles or flyers, for instance, from Zinj. So that's the case. Now, replenishment is great as well. Climate helps a lot. It's always a great campaign to use for domination. And yeah, I believe because of all of that, it is time for you to follow Azazel of the Champions of Chaos.